Okay, let's get this started. Hello, everyone. My name is Saeed Aghabozorgi. I'm a machine learning specialist with AWS. And today I'm going to talk about Amazon SageMaker Autopilot. And this feature of SageMaker to show you how to improve the productivity of building machine learning workloads if you have any kind of machine learning or AI that running on your organization or your company. So today I'm going to go through a few slides quickly, and then also I want to show you a demo of the SageMaker Autopilot. And I'll leave like 2-3 minutes at the end if you have any questions. So feel free to type your question into the chat room on the right side of your screen, and I later come back and answer that questions depends on how timing allows. Okay, let's get started. The quality of voice is low. Let me turn off my video to make sure that the quality of the voice is much better. Hopefully you can hear me now. Okay, in AWS, we see the machine learning stack having 3 key layers. In the bottom layer are frameworks and infrastructure for those who are comfortable building and maintaining their own machine learning platforms and underlying infrastructure. In the middle layer are the machine learning services that make it easy for machine learning developers and data scientists to build, train, and deploy their machine learning models. You can build your models in a single click with Amazon SageMaker. In heart of this layer is Amazon SageMaker. You might have heard about the Amazon SageMaker before. That is a kind of like a managed service that has many features. In addition to Amazon SageMaker, we have one IDE, Amazon SageMaker Studio, that can run a kind of machine learning end-to-end. And one of the features of the SageMaker and SageMaker IDE is Autopilot, that today we'll talk more about. But before I talk about SageMaker Studio and Autopilot and how you can take advantage of that to improve your productivity, I want also to talk about the top layer, our AI services. In the top layer are the AI services that allow you and any developers to use pre-trained and auto-trained models to add intelligence to any application without machine learning expertise. It means that you don't need to be a data scientist to use to build a model. You can easily go and use this trained model or kind of like retrain that model to connect it to your applications. For today, we will focus on the middle layer, specifically SageMaker Studio and a feature of SageMaker Studio, which is Autopilot. Let me quickly check that. Okay, it looks like the voice issue is wrong. So Amazon SageMaker is a fully managed service that removes the heavy lifting from each step of the machine learning process. It makes a lot of the steps that usually is required to develop machine learning models much easier. So you have the flexibility to use automated machine learning or use any component as a modular capabilities, right? So one of the features of the SageMaker, right, is SageMaker Studio, as I mentioned. SageMaker Studio brings lots of tools together to run IDE, so you can test, debug, and deploy and monitor your models and profile all within one single environment in just one integrated IDE. Studio is the first fully integrated IDE for machine learning. It consists of the different components, right? Let me touch some of these components. The first components that I'm going to touch is SageMaker notebooks, which are like a one-click Jupyter notebooks that can be spin up quickly. The underlying component resources that it used for notebooks are fully elastic, so you can easily dial up or down the available resources and the change that take place automatically in background. Another feature of the SageMaker Studio is all of the algorithms that comes out of box. There are 17 most popular algorithms for classification, for clustering, for object recognition, natural language processing, and so on that you can easily use in SageMaker Studio. The another options that you have is one-click training. It means that you can easily train your model with one click, right? And it spin up a cluster behind the scene. It train your model and make your model ready for production. It has automatic model tuning that through different algorithms, you can find the best combination of the hyperparameters to train your model. And at the end, you have deployment features, right? You can right-click on one of the models that is best for you, and with one click, deploy your model and do all of the things that usually you need as like a second day operationalizing the model, such as debugging the model, model monitor, and so on. So briefly, Amazon SageMaker Studio unifies all the tools for ML developers. Developers can write code, track experiments, visualize their data, perform debugging and monitoring all in one environment. Additionally, because all of these steps of the machine learning workflows are tracked with one environment, developers can quickly move back and forth between the steps and kind of like tweak all of the machine learning steps, and they don't have to snitch different tools or come out of one tools and jump to another tools, right? So all is in one environment. It gives developers the ability to kind of make changes quickly. They can quickly observe the outcomes and iterate faster and kind of like reduce the time to market for a machine learning solution. That has resulted in really increasing the productivity. So here is what Amazon SageMaker Studio looks like if you have not opened it before. In this example, for example, we are making updates to the model inside the notebook, and we are seeing how changes impact model quality using a kind of like a side-by-side view of the notebooks and training experiments. So one of the features of the SageMaker Studio is SageMaker Autopilot. It has been built to make machine learning really easier and faster. It's AutoML offering of the SageMaker. You can build classification and regression models without deep machine learning knowledge, right? Just you can provide a tabular data set and select the target columns to predict, and Amazon SageMaker Autopilot automatically explore machine learning solutions with different combinations of tasks that usually data scientists do. For example, data processing, algorithms, algorithm parameter settings, and so on. It runs many different training jobs behind the scene to find the best model. So instead of you to decide which algorithm to use, Amazon SageMaker Autopilot automatically select the right algorithm for you from a list of high-performance algorithms that SageMaker has, and evaluates all of those based on the metrics that you define. For example, you will say that I want to select F1 measure or area under the curve or other metrics that you will define. You can now directly, as soon as the model is built, you can easily deploy that model in the same environment, SageMaker Studio, and the best model goes to the production just with one click. I will show you how you can easily right-click and put that model into the production. So you don't need really to worry about the data cleaning, pre-processing, and Amazon SageMaker automatically will apply different type of data processing to run this autopilot and find the best model for you. Let me quickly jump into demo and show you how SageMaker Autopilot looks like. I hope you can see my screen. So if you go to AWS, if you select the SageMaker, you can see this console, right? And many of the features of the SageMaker will look like would be appear on the left side. One of the features are Amazon SageMaker Studio. As soon as you click on Amazon SageMaker Studio, this panel is started. You can click on one of the studios that you have built. I've already opened one of those. You can see that is the environment for SageMaker Studio. One of the panels in the SageMaker Studio is Autopilot. You can easily create Autopilot experiment. You can click, like, give it a name, for example, TMLS test 2, right? And you select a kind of like a S3 bucket data set that you have. I already have built a data set here, right? This data set is about marketing data for a bank, right? If I want to show you the data set very quickly, the data set is pretty simple, right? There are different columns: jobs, marital status, education, and so on. There's one column whether a customer in the bank will be kind of enrolled in one of the products or not, right? And we are going to predict whether the customer will enroll in that product or not. So is it a yes or no? It's kind of like a classification problem, right? So I will enter the name of the bucket here simply, and I find okay, let me find the bucket name here. Should be somewhere here. Here you are. And I select the data set, right? The data set is this data set, and I select the target value, right? And that's it. And I can create the experiment, right? And it starts the experiment for me. So as soon as the experiment is done, I've already run one of the Autopilot experiments. You can see that it has run many jobs, right? And at the end, based on the measure that I selected, right, it will say that this is the best job ever, right? So it means that it has gone through a different combination of the pre-processing and modeling. It finds the best algorithm and best hyperparameter. I can easily right-click and deploy that model into production. As soon as I deploy it, I can later send a request as batch or as a kind of real-time API and use that model. One last point about the Autopilot is that Autopilot is not a black box. You can easily, Autopilot gives you a notebooks, right? How it has generated that model. So you can easily open the notebooks that Autopilot has created, right? And kind of you can use it as a base. So you have the full vision and flexibility to go back to these notebooks, right? And you change the algorithms that the Autopilot has used. You can see that what algorithm Autopilot has used, and you kind of can start from that point. If you are a data scientist, you can kind of see that it has already built a notebook, generated the notebook for you. You can easily go and, for example, change the notebook or add new algorithms, or you start from that and improve your work much better. So we have only 2 minutes. Let me quickly jump into the question if there is any question. I will stay in the room. If there's any question, I will answer that questions. So let's start from here. Is there any questions? Link to the data, yes. If you, I can provide the link. Later, I will send an email to all of the attendees for this session, and I will add the link to that data set. So SageMaker is kind of different from Kubeflow. Kubeflow is kind of like orchestrators for different jobs, but SageMaker can run many different components, such as SageMaker ground truths for labeling the data. It can run hyperparameter tuning. It has human in the loop. It has, like, when we talk about the SageMaker, it's not only about the training, it's not only about the orchestration. There are many different components, right? And one of the components, for example, is Autopilot or SageMaker Studio that is not available in Kubeflow. How you can set up retraining models. So you can retrain your model. Simply, you can have a kind of like a trigger, right? As soon as you build the model, as you can, you know that behind the scenes SageMaker are all API calls, right? So you can kind of like set up a trigger that just run that training API, right? There are different ways you can do it through the orchestrator. For example, many of our customers use Amazon step function to kind of orchestrate the SageMaker jobs for training, for deploying model, and to evaluate their models. Does Amazon use the Autopilot for analyzing the customer data? Not sure what do you mean by customer data. In this example, we just use a kind of like a sample data sets, right? Which is open source data. You can, and Autopilot is kind of like open, it's not open source, but is available in SageMaker Studio. You can run it on any kind of that you want. Is Google Cloud AI similar to SageMaker? I'm not sure. I've never worked with the Google Cloud AI, so I'm not. I won't be able to compare it with the SageMaker. What are the limitations of this Autopilot compared to the manual process of machine learning techniques? So there are some. The Autopilot kind of like is built for whom wants to not put a lot of time to kind of like pre-process their data, do all of the transformation and so on, right? And they just want to run kind of like a base job to get the best models, right? Without diving into all the transformation and feature engineerings and find the best model and hyperparameter tuning. So in terms of the limitations, you can, as I mentioned before, Autopilot gives you a kind of notebook and you have the full visibility. So any kind of limitations that you can think of, you can later come back to the notebook and you expand that notebooks, right? For example, if there is kind of like a metric or something that is specific for you and it doesn't support in Autopilot, you can easily add it to that notebook and rerun that notebook simply, and you are not going to have that limitation. But definitely there are some very specific use cases that might not support it in the SageMaker Studio Autopilot. For example, right now we don't have, for example, image classification in Autopilot. So another question is about the algorithms and type of workloads that you can run on Autopilot. Right now, we support regression and classification, and specifically on tabular data. So it's kind of what we have right now, but we are adding more and more capabilities into Autopilot for sure. So how does Autopilot evaluate different models and provide the best models? So where you are defining a job, you can simply define what is the metrics that you want, right? I don't know, I think we have passed the time, but I will put 1 more minute. And later, if you have any question, feel free to send me a message. You can easily find my contact, and I will go to the booth as well if you have any question. But as a last question, how does Autopilot evaluates different models and provides you can, when you define a job, you have the availability simply to define what is the, okay, let me quickly show you. So when you define the job, it will say that what is your metrics, right? You have the advanced settings that you can define what is your metrics that you are looking, right? And you can define either, for example, F1 measure, AUC, and so on. And by that, you can it can evaluate the models based on that metrics. Okay, I apologize, I cannot answer more questions. It's almost 11, I have to jump to another cause, but please feel free to go to the booth. I think one of my colleagues, Daniels, are available in the booth. I also try to go to the booth. If you have any question, I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Thanks a lot for joining this session.